Hello and welcome to this edition of Midday Mentors. I'm Richard Pharro. I'm the CEO of APMG International. Today I'm delighted to be talking to Steve Wake. Now I've known Steve for probably over 20 years and I've never been able to put him into a box. I see him as an advocate for trying to make things better in the world of program project management. And probably for the last 25 years, he's been the leader in earned value, certainly in the UK. Steve, is that how you would describe yourself, or do you have a better explanation and definition?
Well, I'd agree with the 25 years, and I have been I started out trying to improve things with earned value. I would say that after about 30 years in the business, my horizon of improvement extends beyond programs and projects now, and probably is looking even further into how these things can be of benefit to society. And leaping back 25 years, that was what kind of drove me in the first place to get interested in earned value. I knew about it as a technique. I was a software consultant, specializing in the aerospace and defense industries for a large project management software outfit at the time. Artemis is a name that people will remember. And I saw an article on the front of the Guardian reporting something from the Public Accounts Committee saying that they'd identified the best part of 12 billion pounds worth of waste in projects.
And was that when the billion meant a lot of money?
It meant a stratospherically high amount of money. And I thought, well, gosh, using earned value on this huge major projects program would benefit, even saving 5 or 10% would be maybe a hospital or two, or have an impact on that will be of benefit to everybody, not only us as project managers, but also taxpayers. So, you know, even then I was driven, I think, ideologically to try and put things right, make them better, improve them. And I think, looking back over the career, that's always what's driven me. I've tended to chase the idea than the money. So I'm famous, not rich.
You say you're now trying to sort of help to improve things for the benefit of society. Is that around programs and projects, or does that still involve earned value? And if it does involve earned value, how would you explain earned value to an alien?
Well, it certainly very much does still involve earned value, and it supports the larger picture that I now have in my head, and which I endeavour to convey to people and help them get there. And we can go on to discuss what that sort of cunning plan looks like. The simplest way that I can explain earned value is by what I think its fundamental purpose is, and what I think the fundamental purpose of a project manager is. And that's to know exactly where you are in terms of status. You know, what you've done, how much you've spent, how much time it's taken you, and how much time it's going to take you to finish the job at its simplistic level. So you could convert earned value, which tends to throw a lot of people with the use of the value word, and I would say a clearer distinction of the technique of earned value, and it's referred to as EVM, earned value management nowadays, is that it's earned scope. It's how much of the scope you've done, how much you've completed of what your original task was, and then expressed in terms again of how much money you spent achieving that scope and how much time it's taken you to do that, and throwing forward how much it's going to end up costing you and the time you're going to spend on that. Now, what was really, really significantly different for me then was that it connected time and spend together so that they were integrated factors. I was doing a huge program, one of my last major software projects for the Underground 25, 30 years ago. And I was, as long as I realized that I was reporting in terms of percent complete, but what I was doing was just putting my finger in the air really and saying, well, you know, I've done 50%, 75%. And I got to the classic 95% syndrome when I realized that I didn't have 5% of budget left. I was out of money. So I was thinking in my head, I've got to be tracking this in a better way. But the other crafty thing that I learned was that as long as I was below budget, everybody thought I was a hero. And nobody would come and chase me. You know, the finance police wouldn't come and get me, accounts wouldn't come and get me, as long as I didn't go overspent. So I remained underspent for as long as I damn well could. And then by the time we got there, I was so far into the project that they couldn't stop us. And so we got the extra money. But that's a scam I pulled, and many people do still, I think, nowadays, that I spotted 25 years ago. And then I realized that earned value would articulate that. So another way of expressing it for those that haven't heard the term earned value, but might have heard this one, is it's physical percent complete. It's not percent complete, but physical percent. How much have you actually done physically that you can count and measure?
But Steve, isn't that one of the problems with earned value? Because if you're applying earned value to a one-off project and you're comparing with what you've actually done with what you thought you would do, so much depends upon the accuracy of the plan, of the estimating of what it is you're going to do. I can see how that works with, say, batch production or something, where you've got a database, and particularly in these days of big data or data analysts, I can see how that might work. But can you genuinely apply it to the one-off project? Because I've also lived in that world of 95% complete, but from the other end. As a client, people would tell me we're 95% complete, and you walk around the project and you could not even see 85% complete, let alone 95%. And it was always a myth. But can you really apply it to a one-off unique project? In all honesty, as someone who's spent over half your life working on this stuff.
Okay, two things then. One is the method, and the method is the best way that I know of getting a really good startup estimate. You know, you can start with a blank sheet of paper and an idea, and then some of these super large projects can spend the best part of a year putting the estimate together, which is then verified by what's called a baseline review.
Yeah.
So then a whole team of people go in, possibly from the side of the customer, that could be the government or, you know, the Olympics, for example, go in and then assess just how good that startup baseline is, because it's the baseline against which everything is measured, because the baseline represents the scope, normally spread out in terms of cost over the lifetime of the project. And it's against that you measure stuff. However, it is open to, well, various degrees of chicanery. And without getting taken to court, I would say one of the greatest puzzlements in my life was being in and around and seeing the 2012 Olympics being put together with one of the best teams on earth in terms of projects, using earned value to put the bid together, and having to come to terms with, and this is possibly beyond the scope of what the project controls board is interested in, is that I still don't know, hand on heart, whether the original bid value, the original baseline, was put forward to win the bid rather than being the truest expression of what it was really going to cost. Because as many of us with even shortish memories will know, that what we bid was not what it ended up costing.
But isn't that just, I mean, isn't that just the nature of projects? And the question is, when do you press the go date? Because wasn't there also the argument on the Channel Tunnel? Didn't Mrs. Thatcher know that the costs were going to be substantially more than they were? But the idea was, once you got the hole through and the link between the two countries, you're going to find the money to do the rest of it.
Yeah, but you've also got very conservative, in inverted commas, committees clucking about the initial value and the initial spend. And dare I say, we're very much there with HS2. Yeah. We've been there with Crossrail. We would never have got it across the line if we told the truth, but nobody does on the Olympics. So there are commercial and political drivers around that. So even though the controls community may know absolutely what they're going to do, it's saving graces that even though the original Olympic bid tripled, really, ultimately, in terms of what it ultimately cost, at least using earned value, every step of the way, every cost change, every cost escalation would have been tracked and explained and would have been auditable. And at least then there was an explanation, an excuse, a reason as to why this happened. And therefore, again, one of the responsibilities, I think, of the straight project manager, the straight project controls person, is to status the project. So they can pass on this information to those elders and better than they are to make informed management decisions and choices, often risk-based, but quite often politically oriented too. Yeah, so I still think that but they often get beaten up for saying, well, and it looks in the press as though they don't know what they're doing. I actually think that they probably do know what they're doing, but they're not being, they're being the ones that are blamed for the escalations and the overruns by people who know full well, with the information that they've been supplied, that's what is actually happening.
But yeah? I mean, we don't want to sort of spend too much time on the Olympics, but my understanding, having read a report by the Institute of Government, is that the project started with a significant contingency sum. Mm-hmm. So, to use your argument, within the project, the actual individual projects and programs could be tightly controlled, but no one knew what the overall cost was going to be of the endeavour. So you could use earned value for that the individual packages of work, but the success was both the realism of the team to say, we really don't know, this cost is it's in a range, and also the authorities accepting something like a 25 or 30% contingency, so that the team had the headroom.
Yeah, well, again as I said, the great thing about earned value is that all these structures are within the framework of earned value. You have something called management reserve. Dare I say that the Brits got ahead of the Americans once we started to get involved in the deployment of earned value in the UK, driven, I think, largely by my early endeavours. And we discussed, if you like, a more risk-based use of management reserve. The American method seemed to be to say, well, you put 15 to 20% on top and you draw that down as and when you need to use it, but you don't actually have to justify it. Right. We went a step further to say, let's build the management reserve, the contingency budget, with risk-based events, both known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and start to put values against those. So when they're actually triggered, you know exactly how much money you thought about for that particular event, you thought about that event, and then you could draw it down, and above all, get it properly funded so that people weren't just, using it as a huge pot to plaster over the cracks as things went wrong. So I think what we put forward was a more reflective response to how we would actually handle the use of those contingencies. I still think, again, and I don't want to labour the Olympic thing, that they held that back in reserve because they didn't want it to queer the pitch of the value that they were being seen to be bidding at. But that's a digression. The whole point is that it's still the best, and I still think today it's still the best framework to operate within if you want to control costs, time and schedule well and report upon it well. That doesn't preclude the fact that there are all sorts of fast track methodologies and bits and pieces that can go on within it, but earned value can encompass all of those too within the huge structures of work breakdown and product breakdown structures.
So you say that you've worked for a number of industries. Is there any particular industry or industries in the UK that have really embraced the concept of earned value and because of it have thrived?
Certainly there has been a huge embrace by some of the larger sectors. So construction is certainly deeply involved. Almost anything to do with infrastructure, really. There is evidence of it. The power and utilities industries as well, transport, the defence industry specifically is using it, largely driven by the American mandate for its use. But again, we finally got lucky, we thought, about 8 years in from when I started, to get a mandate from the MOD. What we didn't realise that, again, we were dealing with people who were really good at finding reasons not to use it. And so that went on for several years until about 3 years ago. The MOD have rewritten their guidance, and again, they are having another turn of the wheel to make all of their project program use various flavours of earned value across the entirety of their project program. Quite how successful they will be and whether that will be all encompassing, we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's still a mighty step forward, and still an indication that there's not really anything better yet to replace earned value for the underlying aspect of its ability to fully status and track a project's progress. And also, let's not forget that I've also characterized to the finance community that earned value is project management for accountants. So the way the structures are set up in earned value lend themselves very well to being placed against accountancy charts of account, you know. So it can make the financial people very happy in terms of being able to of traceability and auditability too. So, you know, but that then gets you sewn into the fabric of what everything that's going on within the organisation is. It gives the project community the opportunity to work with the business people, you know, the design people, to start to turn the whole activity of the organisation into more of a portfolio-based approach, because the structures of earned value can permit that, but also enable the non-project community, the boards of directors, to take a look-see too, and look at that data in order to steer the enterprise.
So if it's so powerful, or it could be so powerful, I'm sure during your portfolio career, you've often been called in to provide advice, provide an independent expert view, or even appear in court as an expert witness in some dispute between a contractor and a client or a promoter. In any of those instances, have you been able to look at existing historic data and apply the concepts of earned value, and use the concepts and the answers you got to either support or indeed to oppose a case for claim?
Yes, three, I think, three very specific ones. Very difficult for me to name.
No names, please, because the insurance won't cover it.
One was a huge aircraft project. One was for a transportation authority within the North Circular, or the M25, and one was for a large computer system for a government department. And we were into sort of forensic analysis, and we were able, with the earned value data, to prove, firstly, well, above all, we were able to prove that the information was available for mitigating actions to be taken that weren't. So in that sense, it was a customer that was more sinned against than sinning, saying to its contractors, its suppliers, you've taken us for a ride. You know, you could have intervened at this point, or blown the whistle at this point, or you didn't need to be spending quite so much money at this point. And so in each of those cases, they won the day using this data.
Right. Now, if earned value didn't exist, would it need to be invented today? And if it had been invented, say, by social scientists rather than engineers, would it have been radically different?
Okay. Absolutely, fundamentally, screamingly, yes. There has to be this, you know, if you're an organizer like me, when you're doing a project, even without earned value, I would say that the best project managers have an idea of where they are. They want to know where are we? You know, wandering around the floor, speaking to people. Are we on target? Whatever target is. When are we going to be ready? Any cost problems? How much is it going to cost at the end? Because if you think that the project manager is wandering around the floor asking those questions, you know why? Because the project manager gets asked all of those sorts of questions by everybody else, and they need to be able to respond, you know, unblinkingly and unflinchingly, not with the "trust me, I'm a project manager" Clint Eastwood approach. But hopefully, because you can get away with that, but not forever. But you've got to be able to, I only feel comfortable if I really know where I am, and I fret if I don't. So I think that there has to be that. And I don't know how anybody can make an informed management decision without having that data expressed in some form available to them. Otherwise, they're on a moving pavement, you know, and they're gonna take a tumble. Or this massively informed choice they're making is based on rotten data. So if we can spring over to data analytics as well, greatly in favour of data analytics. But remember, if you're analysing rubbish, you're only going to be processing rubbish. So earned value is one of the best ways to ensure or assure the integrity of the data in a structured way. Again, largely through a process of review, you know, just really making damn sure that it's right.
So if that's the case, then people keep telling me we live in a VUCA world, right? In all of my career, it's always been volatile. It's always been ambiguous. I can't think of a period in my career when it hasn't been. But if the world is changing even faster, if things are progressing at a faster rate than they used to, do you have enough time to collect the data, to do the analysis, to make the decision before things have already changed significantly compared with where you thought they may be? So you may be on a moving runway or pavement, but isn't that just life? You know, what's the point of the data? It's only going to tell you going to fall off the end faster or later.
Well, even 5 years ago, I might have been forced to say, well, it is what it is. You know, we have to make do with what we do have. But I saw, I mean, the living proof, and the thing that really firmly convinced me was going back into a customer that I've had for in the aerospace arena, admittedly large project, going there and seeing them running their whole program and project suite more or less in real time, and updating their schedule by having it fed real time. And again, one of my early jobs was shop floor data collection systems, you know, automating picking up data. And I saw there before my very eyes what used to be called an MRP run, you know, where you'd update all your schedules and your materials requirements. That used to switch on Thursday afternoon and hope it was going to be ready for Monday. Done in 2 minutes. You know, it's there and then. And so I would say the technology, and so this is a technological advance. The sheer grunt in technology that's available now, the computing power that's available now, can in fact respond immediately to what is going on. And again, so that removes one of the obstacles to making the information available. But you still need human beings that are going to intervene, you know, and you still need project people who are going to come up with not only the raw good data dressed up in a way that, you know, management in inverted commas can make choices about, but I think the job therefore has shifted, or can shift, from scrabbling around getting the data for the monthly report every month and going, phew, thank God that's over, let's start scrabbling around on, you know, on Monday again to get the next month ready, which lots and lots of program offices do, I think, still. And they think that's their job. In actual fact, their job is to have that data at their fingertips so they can inspect it, analyze it, reflect upon it, and give informed, you know, maybe a selection of choices to people, you know, courses of action for people, so they can become informed advisors, respected analysts, you know, and that's where you start to move into this territory of going beyond just measuring and delivering scope, and then participating in the overall business exercise, which, if I may, you know, puts me into where my forward thinking self goes, which is that we should be stepping beyond the management and measurement of scope and getting into the broader business exercise, which brings me on neatly to, I think, a question you asked me about three minutes ago, which was, how would I improve earned value? Well, a couple of things we're doing, and which I've spotted, is that you get a lot of focus and attention on what is called benefits management nowadays. Flavor of the month, benefits oriented outcomes. Government in particular expects that every new idea should be accompanied with a benefits delivery map. a benefits case to inform whether it gets through the approval gate or not. And again, within these 3-4 walls, I don't know how many dimensions we're operating in, I've seen people literally there and then adjust the amount of benefit that's going to be realized in their business case because it's been nodded to them that they need to up the value of the business benefit in some way. And what I started to think about, and then it's thrown over the fence, over to be produced as a project or within a program, and then the project's delivered, and then the audit office go in, as they did a couple of years ago. They inspect these projects and they find that the original benefits have not been delivered. And the problem there is that there are two walls. There's the arrival from the business case, and then there's the exit from the major projects delivery program. And nobody has owned that benefit. The people who created the business case have forgotten about it the minute it's within the hands of the project guys. And then once it gets to the end of the project, they lob it over because, again, as people who think about it a lot, and I do, most benefits don't start occurring until the thing's used. You know, what you're in a project context, you're creating the potential for the benefit to be used. Because, you know, if you want to dig a garden and you want to get some sort of earth removal kit there, you have to build the thing that's going to remove the earth, and then that's done. That's the project. The other bit is what you do with it, the purpose of it. So what I've been pursuing under the broad umbrella and where I am now is, and I've been banging on about it for several years, as people will realise, is what I would term the benefits-driven portfolio. But the benefits-driven portfolio can then contain the entirety of the business exercise, or the enterprise exercise, or the government's portfolio, or anybody's portfolio, as a combination of projects, programs, and business as usual, right? It can all be tracked using earned value ethos or earned value frameworks, still incorporating all the sorts of tricks and treats like, you know, lean manufacturing and agile can do, placed within work packages. But what is also in there should be benefits management, firmly lassoed at when the ideas get created, but handled and managed and supervised and forever tested using the same community that is monitoring the projects, the controls projects as well. The controls community is the ideal set of people to say, let's convert this benefit into a time-phased curve and just watch it emerge, firstly through the creation of the projects, and then, even though it may not be those same people monitoring the benefits after it's exited scope, it can still be handed on to somebody else who will supervise the realization of the benefits over maybe a very long time frame. Now, the audit office has suggested that the spending departments should be responsible for that specifically until they are delivered, which automatically, and they made this statement a couple of years ago in a big report, and for me that was a trigger point, because it actually meant that the spending departments, the owners of this, should be looking at this and monitoring it way beyond when the projects are finished. But for me, I felt, well, there ought to be an easy way of, or a better way of doing that, involving the projects community. And so something has begun to emerge, not taken on broadly, but it's been described as earned benefit. So if you think of earned value as having, the traditional earned value graphic has three curves on it. You know, one is the baseline, and then you measure cost and schedule, and the earned value curve is realized as well. Well, the earned value curve is only measuring the delivery of scope. What if you placed an earned benefit line on there as well and said that throughout the life cycle of this thing, as and when these projects kick into being, even during their development, we know that a certain amount of the beneficial value can be produced and be put to use. Let's track that as well right the way through. So it's just another line and another set of figures to look at and examine, but report globally back to whichever board or collection of stakeholders you can do. Now, to me, that would be a really simple, efficient and economical way of adding that to the project controls committee, but it's also another way of saving what I see is a project controls community that's under threat. And the threat is through automation. I believe that the community is beginning to wake up to the fact that maybe in 10 years' time, a lot of what it claims to be doing, particularly within the PMO arena, is going to be automated. And so the hundreds of people that are wandering around doing PMO-oriented jobs are not going to be there anymore unless they've repurposed what it is that they do. And that's where I believe that the professionalization, the professional term data analyst will become far more significant ever than project controls. I think we have to move away from, yes, we can assure the validity and the certainty of the data we're using, but where the real value is how we are analysing it, how we are passing that information up and down the line, because you have to effect changes when you get somebody's made a decision at the top with this lovely informed data. They pass it back down, and then somebody's got to do something about that too. So I don't see their job going away, but I do think that there's going to be there's the potential for a massive shift in focus on to who does that job. If it's going to be the current community, then they really need to start changing now, and they could do that with this underpinning of an earned value framework far more easily, I think, than just about anything else that's available in the tool set, because it does encompass just about everything we're doing.
Steve, thank you for that. I look forward to seeing how that pans out over the next few years. But I agree with you. I think data and data analysis in the project and program arena must be a huge benefit for the community, particularly if you look at some of the work being done by people like Martin Paver in this space. And you think, how does that though come together to make people even more relevant in terms of the roles, as they have the technology there? And I agree with you. I don't see automation driving away the human decision-making activity, but you've got to have a person that's willing to analyze and come up with recommendations and be challenged on those recommendations, rather than hiding behind, well, I was only asked to put the report together. Yeah. So it does need a big change set among some people in that.
Yeah.
Steve, it's been great talking to you. Do you have one last comment before we finish?
The biggest mistake I made was in the early days in particular, was to go into a customer and implement earned value without checking that that customer's ready to do it. And by that I meant the customer had to, I realized that the customer had to have a degree of proficiency and appetite, behavior, culture, in order to incorporate the way of doing earned value things. So if you thought that placing earned value without some kind of softening up or remolding of the behaviors and cultures of an operation, or indeed looking at what their basic project management proficiency was, you were on a hiding to nothing. And the easiest way to discredit earned value in particular is to start, kicking out stupid data, because you can kick out rubbish variances if the underlying project management or project controls framework is poorly done. So I would say, and here I might get into hot water, it still grieves me when people publish something like a portfolio management guide, like a benefits management guide, like the TSO did, lob it over the fence and think that the job's done. And similarly, and here I might get into hot water, I saw the arrival of a project delivery standard, which wasn't really a standard apparently, delivered by IPA last autumn. And I still sensed that they thought it was job done.
Yeah.
And I still know that without the culture being right within government departments particularly, and their customer and their suppliers, if the culture isn't right, then those things are going to rot on the shelf. So as much as earned value is a geek's technical framework thing, with my behavioural scientist background as well, I'm really fixated too on making sure that the people are right too, because without the right people, none of this stuff works.
I agree with you. It has to be people first, deliver all the time.
Absolutely.
Steve, always fascinated to talk to you. As always, you have such a wealth of interests and views on these things. Fascinating. It's also brilliant to see you still retain your humour and your enthusiasm for something you've been working on for 25 years. Steve, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Richard.